Kembo Kembo, Natata Nzambi, Yamazulu. All praises to Tata Nzambi, Mama Ndombe, the seven archangels, the 24 elders of the kingdom of Zulu. I want to welcome everyone here. First, the community that is with me, welcome. Always a joy and honor to have you all present. I want to welcome YouTube and Facebook. We are discussing the Arab slave trade, also known as the Eastern slave trade and the Arabic Muslim slave trade and the Saharan slave trade. So I want to read this disclaimer. This lesson is to present truths and facts about the horrific history of our ancestors. This is not an attack on religion or ethnicity, even though both played a major role. The one thing I do want to say also is that there are two types, and I'm speaking in general. There are two types of people in this world: the truth tellers and the liars. And for many years, 400 plus years, liars have been in control. And when you have a group of people, such as the liars, that are ruling, they can bring any narrative they wish. They can teach any narrative they wish. So they're running and controlling the airways. They control YouTube, Facebook, television, the news, anything. And they can present whatever they so desire. They can hide the truth because it's what they do. As I was doing this research on this particular lesson, the one thing that I came across was a young man living in Cape Verde. His name is Ronaldo, but he is called Nehono. And I may be mispronouncing it. I could be tearing that name up. Forgive me. But it's spelled Neguinho. And it is a Portuguese word. And it means little Negro. And this is what they call this man. And it's not by an insult, but what he's doing is going around teaching kids about their history. So the question is, why is he teaching the kids about their history? One is because in Cape Verde, the schools does not teach about the slave trade. So the children know nothing about the slave trade. We heard that's what they want to do here in the United States. They want to sweep it under the rug. And there are some who say the slave trade is blown out of proportion, or we're bringing it up, making more out of it than it really should be. That is a disgrace to say something like that to your ancestors, those who fought for you, those who died for you, those who tried to keep you on the continent and were murdered. And you want to say it's overblown? And now they're trying to say it didn't happen. and that we are indigenous to this land. Think about it, my brothers and sisters. For many years, we have been ruled and under the thumb of liars. And it is now time. This is the age of Aquarius, that the truth should be revealed. The Arabic slave trade, also known as the Trans-Saharan trade, Eastern slave trade, and as I said before, the Arab Muslim slave trade. The Arab slave trade, or the Arab Muslim slave trade, also known, again, as I said, as the Trans-Saharan trade or the Eastern slave trade, is noted as the longest slave trade, having occurred for more than 1,300 years, while taking millions of Africans away from their continent to work in foreign lands in the most inhumane conditions. Now, one thing that stuck out to me too is a group of people. They're over in India. They're called the Siddhi. The Siddhi, Siddis. Let me just side note. I want to thank everyone that has helped me, contributed to this lesson. I truly thank you for your help, Mama Brenda, brother. You know who you are, my king Matondo, and to Nabi Yanata. I thank you. So they gave me information as well as the research that I did. So I truly thank you all for your help. These group of people, the Siddhi, Siddis, they live in India, and they have formed their own community over there. But they came from Africa, and they are Bantu. And they, from what I understand, they had migrated over from Somalia, Ethiopia, and Eritrea. And they, just made a living there. And they have separated themselves from the Indian people that are there. But the Indian people have given the Siddhi credit for the establishments that they did, all that they did there in India, because they at one time they were rulers, like generals and princesses and prince. They held high offices, and they did a lot for the upbuilding of India. So to see now basically how, as we know, people taking over other groups of people, the Siddhi have, just kind of went back into a lower state, if I could put it that way, by separating themselves. And this is what they chose to do because they wanted to maintain their culture. So they have their culture of Africa. And, they live, as I said, away from the Indian people. So I want to reach out to them and acknowledge them. And for anyone that is able to get this video out, in the hands of these people, the Siddhi, as well as our other brothers and sisters that were taken into the other slave trade, this Arab Muslim slave trade, get this video into their hands because I want them to know we have not forgotten about you. You are our brothers and sisters. Who the Portuguese and all had taken into slavery and taken you over there, they took our ancestors as well. That's who they took and scattered into that part of the world. They're our ancestors. We're all family. And our return home is soon. So we have not forgotten about you. A significant number of studies have been devoted. I'm moving this thing out the way so I can read. A significant number of studies have been devoted to the transatlantic slave trade. But paradoxically, the issue of the Eastern and trans-Saharan slave trade, organized by the Arabs, remain unknown. We don't hear much about it. It even seems deliberately ignored and considered a taboo subject. Yet the Arab slave trade, a major component of African history, lasted more than 13 centuries. It began in the early 7th century and continued in one form or another until the 1960s. In Mauritania, slavery was officially outlawed only in August of 2007. Isn't that something? That was just a few years ago, 2007. The deportation of Africans to the lands of Islam was structured around two main roads: the maritime traffic between the coast of East Africa and those of the Middle East on the one hand, and the trans-Saharan caravan traffic on the other. In the eastern part of the continent, Arab raids affected an area comprising the Horn of Africa, East Africa, and the Great Lakes region. Slaves captured during bloody expeditions were then transported by sea from enclaves or enclaves situated on the eastern coast of the continent between present-day Somalia and Mozambique to the shores of the Red Sea and the Persian Gulf. Zanzibar would serve for centuries as a hub for this traffic. Now, Zanzibar at one time was called Zanzibar, which means land of the blacks. In West Africa, the Arab slave trade encompassed a vast region from the Niger Valley to the Gulf of Guinea. This traffic followed the trans-Saharan roads. The crossing could last up to 3 months, with a high mortality rate due to the dire conditions of the trip. The Arab slave trade was characterized by appalling violence, castration, and rape. The men were systematically castrated to prevent them from reproducing and becoming a stock. This inhumane practice resulted in a high death rate. 6 out of 10 people who were mutilated died from their wounds in castration centers. The Arab slave trade also targeted African women and girls and younger. They even had babies who were captured and deported for use as sex slaves. This despicable phenomenon was legitimized by Islam, as Christianity would later condone the transatlantic slave trade. For example, the Tunisian Arab historian Ibn Khaldun, 1332 to 1406, wrote that the only peoples to accept slavery are the Negroes, because of their lower degree of humanity, their place being closer to the animal stage. Now, this guy, this is an Arab here. The one thing that I really want you all to understand and to know is that the Arab didn't like us. They don't like us. There is a pure hatred for us that they have. And the question is why? That's an answer I have not found yet. But they hate us. And to see how they looked at us and thought of us to castrate the men because they didn't want the men to become a stock by reproducing with our women. So they would castrate them. But yet they would use our women. They would rape them along with the children. Some things here that I read, I couldn't believe the way they did our brothers and sisters. You know, we heard of the terrible things that they did to us in the transatlantic slave trade, using our babies as gator bait, cutting the limbs of those who tried to run away, cut off the feet because they tried to run off, cut the hands because they tried to take food to eat, they were hungry, even cut out the tongue because they would not speak the language. They were speaking their native language. So to prevent them from speaking their native language, they would cut the tongue out. But some of the things that I seen in this, I'm like, man, these are some sick entities, evil entities. There were some crucial people that dealt with us, sick individual. I hate calling them people because they're not people. Human beings don't act like this. They're evil entities. The Arabic slave trade, the invasion. This I found to be interesting. Jerusalem was captured by the Arabs in 638 CE. Alexandria in Egypt fell to them in 643 CE. In 698 CE, they captured Carthage, thus ensuring their political influence in all of Northern Africa around the Mediterranean. Did any of you all know that they captured Jerusalem? The Arabs did. Did any of you all know this?
I didn't know this.
No.
No.
Yeah, this blew me away. All we hear about is Greco-Roman.
Mm-hmm. The Romans.
But here it's telling us the Arabs did it. Arabs did not move into the region until much later, but tried to control it at the time with language and the Islamic religion. The Arabs began to invade Africa in large numbers from 749 CE when they settled in Alexandria, Egypt. They were mistakenly seen as African cousins and were welcomed as saviors from the oppressive rule of the Byzantium, the Greco-Roman domination. Now, this tells you something about the Arabs. If the Africans saw them and mistook them as cousins and looked at them as saviors, what do you think the Arabs looked like?
They looked like us.
Yes, definitely didn't look like them. The ones nowadays that we see, but they look like us. This is what they look like. The true, real Arabs. I told you, there's two types of people, the truth tellers and liars. I want you all to remember this guy's face right here too. Remember him. He played a big part, a huge part in the in the Arabic slave trade. The Arabs did not directly force their religion on the African Egyptians at first. That followed later. But unlike Christianity, Islam could not be translated into local languages. With the Africans looking for something to replace their banned traditional religion and imposed Greco-Roman Christianity, literacy in Arabic soon spread. And assisted by intermarriages and Christian apostasy to gain relief from taxation, Islam quickly became the religion of the land. So now I understand why Islam is so strong and prevalent in Africa. Although the Quran does not distinguish between races, this is a strong legacy. There is a strong legacy of racism against Africans from early Islam because the language, traditions, and customs of the Arabs supports the downgrading of the African race. And this, reading through this, I was getting angry. Dr. Azuma, in his book, The Legacy of Arab Islam in Africa, provides several examples of Islam's hatred of Blacks, Africans. There is the example in the Hadith in which an Ethiopian woman laments her racial inferiority to Muhammad. We're talking about an Ethiopian woman, okay? And she goes to the prophet Muhammad, who consoles her by saying, in paradise, the whiteness of the Ethiopian will be seen over the stretch of 1,000 years. Just let that sink in. She is talking about how she has been treated as an Ethiopian woman, a Black woman. Racial inferiority. And she goes to Muhammad, one who looks like her, an Arab, and he consoles her. So this says, in paradise, the whiteness of the Ethiopian will be seen over the stretch of 1,000 years. Y'all remember this guy?
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Osama Bin Laden. All right. Now I'll show you why I brought him up. Another hadith quotes Muhammad, do not bring Black into your pedigree, talking about Africans. Don't mix with them. In fact, the Arabic word for slave, abid, became equated with Africans and Blacks with the advent of Islam. Osama bin Laden, in discussion with a Sudanese American novelist, Kola Booth, in Morocco in 1996, said, when next you meet an Arab, you should ask, what is the Arabic word for slave? You'll discover that the words are the same, abid, which is why when an Arab looks at a Black African, what he sees is a slave. Don't see a human, don't see another person, but what they see is a slave. Man, let me find my cursor. All right, there we go. I'll move some stuff out the way here. All right. Muhammad owned and sold Black slaves. In fact, he ordered and built the pulpit of his mosque with African slave labor. Sounds like the same exact thing that they did with us over here. We built America, built the White House. The Quran encourages sex with female slaves in several places. Classical Islamic law allows, look at this one, allows a light-skinned Muslim man to marry a Black woman, but a Black Muslim man is restricted from marrying a light-skinned woman. As the literature of the time put it, only a whore prefers Blacks. The good woman will welcome death rather than being touched by a Black man. Now, remember, it was the Africans that was looking for relief out from under the Romans. So they accepted the Islamic religion to get away from Christianity. So now you have some African Muslims whom the Arabs call Blacks. And this is who they're talking about. The Black Muslim, the African Muslim, those whom they hate. It's okay for the light-skinned Muslim, which are some of the Arabs, to marry the Black woman, but not for the Black Muslim to marry a light-skinned woman. The light-skinned woman would much rather have death than to be touched by a Black man, African. So interwoven is slavery with Islam that Islam's holiest city, Mecca, site of the Hajj pilgrimage, was a slave trading capital. Quoting Azuma again, up until the 20th century, Mecca served as the gateway to the Muslim world for slaves brought out of Africa. It became a custom for pilgrims to take slaves for sale in Mecca or buy one or two slaves while on Hajj as souvenirs to be kept or sold or given as gifts. That sounds like going to Disney World. And you go to Disney World, you go into a souvenir store and you buy souvenirs. This is what they did during their Hajj event. And they would buy slaves, buy them to sell them, or for souvenirs, as it says here, to be kept, sold, or given as gift. And I read in one place where slaves were given as gifts to Muhammad. And it said that the thing about Muhammad, it said that he didn't treat the slaves like true slaves. You know, he had somewhat of compassion for them. He may have kept them for, you know, a month or two, but then said that he would release them, give them their freedom. I don't know how true that is, but this is what I read. But he was always accepting slaves. He had them working for him. As we read earlier, they built the pulpit for him. Muslim, Arab, and Persian literature depicts Blacks as stupid, untruthful, vicious, sexually unbridled, ugly and distorted, excessively merry, and easily affected by music and drink. Nasser al-Din-Tusi, a famous Muslim scholar, said of Blacks, "The ape is more capable of being trained than the Negro." Ibn Khaldun, an earlier Muslim thinker, writes that Blacks are only humans who are closer to dumb animals than to rational beings. Any comments so far?
Based on what you've read so far, Yaya, I can only come to the conclusion that this Islamic religion, this to me, somehow, the spirits are from the lower astral realm. This it sounds like almost like fallen angel type spirits that have come together to form this whole Islamic religion. It's very wicked. It's very demonic, which would make sense to go against the Bana too. So that's just what I've come to conclude. It's a wicked fallen spirit that came into play here.
Queen Adija, yes, ma'am.
A couple of things. Well, the first thing is your the last paragraph that speaks to the physical and mental state of what they consider to be a slave or black man, to me only is just a reflection. So everything that they're saying, stupid, untruthful, vicious, sexually unbridled, that's a reflection. Simply means that's them, because that's exactly how they are. So
Yes.
they're projecting how they are onto what is a superior being to them. And which leads secondly to the next thing, which is that the reason why they pretty much would only allow engagement with the black slave women is because they can produce and reproduce. But because the men cannot do that, they would treat them more harsher and would cast them off, and the women more or less would be more of the trophies and the souvenirs that they accumulate and collect for the sole purpose of reproduction. I believe it's T who mentioned this, and I've also heard it in several other videos where when you really think about it, the women are the ones that bring life into this world. And if you really put it in perspective of of biology, this can go a little deep, but I'll try to keep it a bit surface. When you have the sperm and you have the egg, they showed a little demonstration of how it all happens, to say that the sperm, when it meets with the egg, typically the sperm would, the bigger portion of it, the bulkier part of it is what will form the brain and the spinal column. And the egg of the woman will be the part that will form every part else of the physical being. So all the internal organs, the skin, all of that will be what will be made up by the egg. But the sperm will be the brain, the spinal column, and at some point, calcification to form the bones. So the heart of a person, the essence of a person, is in the flesh, whereas the mentality of the person is in the sperm. So their children, if they combine with their women, will be more superior thinkers than them and could easily overthrow them in their likeness. I know that I may not make a lot of sense, but that's just to simply say that they are trying to keep themselves, on the up and keep us on the low. But the Nzambi knows exactly what he's doing, and Mama Ndombe is very intelligent in how she approaches the overthrow of the other folks. So whichever way they like to play it, they've already lost.
Yes, and get the Basseh. Yeah, you both have made some very interesting points. The Islamic, and again, not speaking against a religion, but just making a point to say what they have in the Hadith. Talking about the Africans, it makes you wonder, yes, if this is something that was brought forth by the fallen. And again, it's religion. We know religion is not of Tata Nzambi. It was never about religion. It was always about relationship through spirituality, not religion. And also, Queen Khadijah, you know, when you say it, it's a reflection of them. It is to say that our brothers or the Africans are vicious. You all were the ones, the Arabs were the ones that went in and took over and took us into slavery. Sexually unbridled, you're the ones that that rape our women, young girls, and children. So they are trying to throw their ways upon us. Yes, they are. Elder Jabulani, yes, sir. Welcome.
Siemi family.
Siemi.
Yes. Yeah, just as I'm listening to you, you know, yeah, it does make you feel a bit angry, a lot of being angry, but it just confirms, you know, it confirms so beautifully what our Messiah, Enoch, has said, you know, because we were commanded that a mixture of an African woman and an angel must be called evil spirit. So as we are reading this, it just makes so much sense that sometimes, you know, there are two things that have happened to us. The first thing, we did not listen. When the Most High said, follow my laws, if you don't follow my laws, I'm going to take my Shekinah out. And then if I take my Shekinah out, non-human will move in.
Yes.
That is in Deuteronomy 32, verse 21. And then we did not listen. And then the Shekinah was out. And non-human moved in. And when they moved in, we saw them, they look like human, but they behave like animals. And we forgot what the Most High said. Then we said, these are human with animal behavior. But as we are reading here, you can see these are animals that looks like human.
Yes.
So if we can correctly identify them, that these are animals with that look like human, then we're going to be more careful around them. Yeah, so no, this is very touching because these people were very brutal. Even there's Baba Credo Muta who wrote a book. He's explaining that they were called the feared ones. You know, they were very brutal. When they come to an area, they were just slaughtering. So, but their time is here. They are going to pay. They are going to pay for what they have done.
Yes.
The Most High is already working. There's no way, there's no hiding place. When they go to the rocks will melt. When they go to the sea will boil. No, thanks. That's what I wanted to add.
Yes. Matondo. Powerful. Nkosi Kangi. Yes, sir.
Yes, yes. Oh, good to see you, Elder Jabulani.
Yes.
The other thing is, my question when you were reading this, Shaya, is it said that our people wanted to get away from the Greco-Roman religion. So they took on Islam. Well, why did they not want to go back to African spirituality? That's what I don't understand. That was a mistake.
Well, I do know through the research that they were taking them into slavery if they did not convert. Okay. Yes. So a lot of them, they converted, you know, just so they wouldn't be taken into slavery. But then, you know, you had those of us who stood firm and kept our culture and spirituality.
Okay.
Yes, but that was a good question.
Correct. Before you say anything, just to help add some additional clarification for Brother Nkosi, if you read the Maccabean situation, that speaks to that this Arabic slave trade portion of the slaves of Africa. So you can see how they were brutal in the sense where if you didn't convert, they killed you.
I see.
So people were put to the point where they had no choice. They feel like, okay, for us to save our lives, let's just go ahead, and change it. But the Maccabean story is what would shed light on that situation.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Matondo.
Yeah, and thank you for that. I did forget that part of it. Thank you. They would kill you as well. So yes. Ibn Sina, 980 to 1037. Arab's most famous and influential philosopher, scientist in Islam, described blacks as people who are by their very nature slaves. That's all we're good for. He wrote, all African women are prostitutes, and the whole race of African men are a bred slave stock or a breed of slave stock. He equated black people with rats plaguing the earth. I mean, you see how they thought of us? And as Elder Jabulani has said, these are not people. These are evil entities. And it's in the book of Enoch. They're evil entities. We knew that the enemy would be after this because the Bible says it. Even though we know the Bible has been tampered with, it said it, that Shetani would come after the chosen people. Who's Shetani? It's not one individual. It's a group of people, a lot of them. We had them, we saw them in the transatlantic slave trade. We live amongst them today, and we see it in the Arabic slave trade, and they still live amongst us today. Evil entities who hate us. And I say it because we are created in the image of Tata Nzambi, Mama Ndombe. We are gods. We are powerful people. Not them. We have been chosen.
Now I understand why they wanted to take the book of Enoch out. Now I understand even more so, like Elder Jabulani had said.
Yes. Ibn Khaldun, an Arab historian, stated that blacks are characterized by levity and excitability and great emotionalism, adding that they are everywhere described as stupid. That's old saying, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. I mean, what they're saying about us, man, it is so degrading. This is how they thought of us and how they think of us. Al-Damashiki, an Arab pseudoscientist, wrote, the equator is inhabited by communities of blacks who may be numbered among the savage beasts. Their complexion and hair are burnt, and they are physically and morally abnormal. Their brains almost boil from the sun's heat. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but don't the Arabs live over that way too?
Yes.
Aren't their skin black like ours? And even some of the hair is very similar to ours. So, I mean, it tells me that their brains are boiled from the sun too.
No, their brains are not gonna boil. That's the reason why they wear the turbans. We don't wear the turbans. I just had to say that.
And like you said earlier, it's a reflection. It's a reflection. That's all they're doing. And we have the same reflection. We get the reflection from those who took us into captivity.
Mm-hmm.
They try to throw on us the way they are. So just flip this thing around. Flip it around.
Mm-hmm.
Ibn al-Faqih al-Hamadani, and I know I may be chopping these names up, painted this no less horrid picture of Black people. The Zanj, the Blacks. Remember I said Zanzibar was also called Zanzibar. The Zanj are overdone until they are burned, so that the child comes out between black, murky, malodorous, stinking, and crinkly haired, with uneven limbs, deficient minds, and depraved passions. All sounds like them. Arabs' attitude to Blacks derives from Genesis' racist fiction of the three sons of Noah, Ham, Japheth, and Shem. Arabs claim that the accursed Ham was the progenitor of the Black race, that Japheth begat the full-faced, small-eyes Europeans, and that Shem fathered the handsome of race with beautiful hair, Arabs, of course. So this is the thing that really get me. You know, a lot of us growing up, you know, coming into this truth, how can I say, we when we look at Noah and his three sons, why do we think that the three sons are three different nations? From one man, he was albino, Noah was albino, but he was Bantu. He was a brother. His wife was a sister, a queen. You have a king and a queen. We know that colors come from us. We can have light-skinned children, dark skin, in between. We can have different shades of children, but different nations? No.
That doesn't make sense.
This is their way of inserting themselves to say, we are a part of Abraham. We are a part of the Bible. This is their way of inserting themselves. Noah did not have three different nations, him and his wife. They did not have three different nations. It did not come from his loins. He had children that looked like him. They spread it. They went into different parts of the world, but they were not different nations. These other nations, if I can use this terminology, are infiltrators.
And Yahya, this Arab attitude to what you just read reminds me of another group running around saying everybody is Hamites.
Yeah, and I would even venture to say this is where that came from. This is exactly where that came from. Because remember, this Arab slave trade was the longest lasting slave trade. The longest lasting, and probably started earlier, more than likely started earlier than the transatlantic slave trade. So the narrative was out there. So yes, I would say that's where it came from.
Yeah, they caught us with this Ham story. You know, that one is it's a huge one. Eh?
Mhm.
And when you can check, even when you read, as much as it sounds brutal, at the same time you can sense some jealousy. You know, some
Yes.
of the things you can sense when they say stupid, you can sense that actually they are jealous of our intelligence.
Mhm.
Because for
Mhm.
us to put us down, they had to play with our mind. They know that we built Egypt. So
Yes.
there's a sound of jealousy as well when as we are reading these cruel things that they are saying.
Mhm.
Yes. You're so right. You're so right. And that to me is the main narrative of both slave trades. And I hate calling it a trade because it wasn't. It was a slave haul. But that's the main narrative: jealousy, envy, because of who we are. You know, looking at the Sadiq people, the one thing that they said was that the Portuguese got them and took them into slavery because they were stronger. Not the Portuguese, but the Africans, the Sadi people. They were stronger. And we know this. This is why they came and they got us also as well, because we're stronger. We can stay out in the sun. The sun kills them. We're very highly intelligent.
Mhm.
They know
Great
this.
point there. Great point there. You know what? just even check when they say the name of Abram was changed. He was not changed to Abraham or Abrajaphet. He was changed to Abraham. So they still wants to connect themselves with Ham somehow because they call themselves Abrahamic. Why do you put the Ham there?
Fusion, you see.
Yes, I like that. Never saw that one, Elder. That was good. That was good. I often wonder, I would love to have the original names. I would love to have those original names because I know these names were replaced. They inserted them. But that's an excellent point. All right. After the Arabs had conquered Egypt, and shortly after Muhammad's death, they began demanding Nubian slaves from the south. Wasn't there somebody that spoke earlier, maybe before the teaching? They said that they just began to get people from everywhere, black people, and make them slaves. Didn't somebody say that earlier when we were talking?
Yeah, I did, Yaya.
Okay. So now it says right here, they began demanding Nubian slaves from the south. And correct me if I'm wrong, Elder, but even the Nubian or Bantu.
Yes, Nubians are Bantu. Remember, Nubians are Cushites. You must another thing that we need to be aware. If you check and you investigate the books that were removed, you will know that Abraham was a Chaldean.
Yes.
Abraham was a Chaldean. A Chaldean is a Cushite. So the Nubians are Cushites.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, the book of what you call this Judith, it will tell you that the children of Lot, they were referred as well as Canaanites. And when you also check when Lot and Abraham had a dispute amongst their headsmen, Abraham said to Lot, choose whether you whichever area you want to choose. If you choose east, I'll choose west. If we choose west, I'll choose east. He never said, if you choose east, you must go and kill the Canaanites in the east and take over that land. and I will also kill the Canaanites in their west. It shows that they were already in their own lands.
Wow. Man, that is interesting. That is interesting. See, we get so much separation over here. We don't even look at that. We're taught all about separation. Let me stop because I was getting ready to say something. Okay. Matondo for that, elder. Matondo. So this continued for 600 years. Dominated African kingdoms were forced to send on a regular basis tributes of slaves to the Arab ruler in Cairo. They were forced, dominated African kingdoms. They were forced to send tributes of slaves to the Arab ruler in Cairo. From as early as the 6th century CE, they had developed slavery supply networks out of Africa, from the Sahara to the Red Sea, and from Ethiopia, Somalia, and East Africa to feed demands for slaves all over the Islamic world and the Indian Ocean region. That was just literally all over Africa. Get slaves and send them out to the Islamic world, wherever they may need them. The African male slaves were castrated. Here we go again. They were castrated and used as domestic servants or to work the Sahara salt deposits or on farms all over the Islamic world. And the African female servants were continuously raped before being sold to thousands or to households, to be used as sex slaves. Now look at what they did with the offspring. Offsprings from the illicit encounters were largely destroyed as unworthy to live. The kids of the Arabs who raped the African women, our sisters, our queens, they raped them. And then when they gave birth to the babies, they destroyed them, saying they were unworthy to live.
Yeah, wicked entities, wicked beings. That's what they are.
But they castrate our brothers, our kings, to keep them from multiplying. And then, oh man, after doing their business with our queens, they send them off to households to be used as sex slaves. I mean, this hurts. This truly hurts. I can only imagine the spirit that entered into some of our queens from all this raping taking place, happening not only to the women, but to the daughters, the young girls, even to the babies. What they did to our babies. It is angering. It is very angering and disturbing.
And not to mention, Yaya, how many of the men that just literally would die from castration, the bloodiness of that and the pain. That's so inhumane.
It is. It is. It hurts. It hurts. Between 650 CE and 1905 CE, over 20 million African slaves had been delivered through the trans-Saharan route to the Islamic world. 20 million. And the Jews want to, sorry, I probably need to take that out. They want to complain over 6 million and tell us to remember the Holocaust. Dr. John Alambella Azuma, in his book, The Legacy of Arab Islam in Africa, estimates that over 80 million more died en route. 80 million more. They died en route. A text from Dr. Nzumba books provides this quote from a Zanzibar observer about the travails of African slaves en route to slave markets around the Arab world. And this is what really tore me up. Moving some stuff out the way here. As they filed past, we noticed many chained together by the neck. The women, who were as numerous as the men, carried babies on their backs in addition to a tusk of ivory or other burden on their heads. It is difficult to adequately describe the filthy state of their bodies. In many instances, not only scarred by the whip, but feet and shoulders were a mass of open sores. Half-starved, ill-treated creatures who, weary and friendless, must have longed for death. Let me move this. A Muslim herdsman in Dr. Azuma's book described the fate of those who became too ill or too weak to continue the journey as follows. We speared them at once. For if we did not, others will pretend they are ill in order to avoid carrying their loads. No, we never leave them alive on the road. They all know this custom. When asked who carries the ivory, when a mother gets too tired to carry both her baby and the ivory, the herdsman replied, "She does. We cannot leave valuable ivory on the road. We spear the child and make her burden lighter." Come on. You see this mindset? They don't care. But how could they? If they're evil entities, how could they care? Between 9th and 10th centuries, several millions of Zanj, black slaves, were imported from Zanzibar to lower Iraq, where they constituted more than half the total population and worked to clear saline lands for irrigation and to cultivate sugar. Man, the things they did to our people. The African slaves were transported through Mombasa, Zanzibar, and the Sudan. More millions of African slaves were involved in the Islamic experience on the East Coast African route than in the West African and Sahara route. At first, they were used largely for military purposes, then as domestic servants, concubines, or eunuchs, in affluent Muslim households. In Northern Africa, many became galley slaves, and in the Persian Gulf, pearl divers, port laborers, sailors, and date farmhands. Some notable Africans from the Arab slavery experience included the Nubian eunuch, Abu Emisk Kufr, who became regent in Egypt of the 10th century, and Sidi Badar, who briefly seized the throne of Bengal in the 1490s. There was also the 17th century great African Muslim general, Males Ambar, who led the resistance of the Deccans against the Mughals. A distinctive African community has survived culturally in a place called Jarut in Iran. I don't know if I pronounced that right or not, Jarut or Harut in Iran. All right. So I'm going to talk about our trip. Brenda and I, we a couple years ago, we went to Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, and we took a tour over in Zanzibar. We've been learning and hearing a lot in this lesson talking about Zanzibar, and it says Zanzibar was the hub of the slave trade. So I'm just going to share some things with you that we came across in our tour. The slave chamber, as you see on the side here, it says, during the slave trade, these 2 underground rooms were used to keep slaves before being taken to the market for auctioning. A small hut was on top, and there was a big hole used as an entrance to the slave chambers. Slaves were kept in terrible conditions. So many died of suffocation and starvation. The amount was terrible. So these are the slave chambers. On the right side and on the left, this is where they kept the slaves. They sat up here. All this area here is where they sat. You can see this is the ceiling here. Just imagine how hunched over they were sitting up in here. This is probably about, maybe 3 feet, if that. It wasn't much room. They could not sit up like we sit in a chair. They couldn't sit up. They were hunched way over, almost face to knees, sitting up on these cement slabs here. And here, the legs would hang down. But in this area, when they had to relieve themselves, this is where they did it, right there on the floor. This is where they walked in at. And I tell you, when we walked in, it was me, Brenda, and our youngest son. When we walked in with the tour guide, you could smell the urine. And when he, mentioned that it was the urine, we looked at him like, from all those years, you can still smell? And he said, yes. Yes. Now, going down to this chamber, as you go down the steps, there's a small cubicle is where the security guards would sit. And you had a chamber on the left and a chamber on the right. The chamber on the right is where they kept the men and the children. You heard me, the men and the children. The chamber on the left is where they kept the women. They wouldn't even put the children with the women. And the chambers looked the same. They had to relieve themselves the same way. And this was the holding spot before they took them out to be sold. My son, when Brenda and I were back out in the area where they were selling the slaves, I don't want to say the slaves, selling our siblings, our brothers and sisters. Our youngest son at the time, I think he was about 14, 15 years old. He looked at us and he said, I've been here before. And we looked at him, what? And he said, I remember this place. I've been here before. It scared us. I'm not going to lie, it scared us. And Brenda looked at him. She said, you've been here before? She said, this is our first time here. He said, I know. He said, but this place is familiar to me. He said, yes, I've been here before. That's an ancestor, my brothers and sisters.
That's exactly what I was going to say, Yaya. He's an ancestor.
Ganesh real.
Saeed Khalifa bin Saeed, fourth Sultan of Zanzibar. And I don't know why my cursor is tripping. I'm trying to point him out. There we go. The fourth Sultan. You see who they're sitting amongst. Okay. I think these are Berlin people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. This is the Sultan here. This is the second Sultan of Zanzibar, Bagash bin Saeed. See chat there. Yeah. Yes, Queen Lizzie. I feel the same way. It hurt. It hurt. Wow. All right. There he is. Ahmed B. Mohammed al-Majibi. Did I pronounce that right? Ahmed B. Muhammad al-Marjebi, the famous late 19th century Arab slave trader in Central and Eastern Africa, also known as Tipu Tip or Tipu Tip. Tipu Tip made riches. He was the wealthiest man during the slave trade era of this Arabic, Muslim, Arab slave trade. He also dealt in ivory, and he had a plantation where he had 10,000 slaves. When they wanted to abolish slavery, and in fact, I think at a time that they did abolish slavery, Tipu Tip continued slavery. He was so into it, and he was making a lot of money from it. He continued dealing in slavery. Tipu Tip himself, as a well-bred carriage with a Negroid countenance. Negroid countenance. At a relatively, I can't read now, at a relatively young age, Tip led a group of about 100 men into Central Africa, seeking slaves and ivory. After plundering several large swaths of land, he returned to Zanzibar to consolidate his resources and recruit for his forces. Following this, he returned to mainland Africa. Tipu Tip built a trading empire using the profits to establish clove plantations on Zanzibar. Abdul Sharif reported that when he left for his 12 years of empire building on the mainland, he had no plantations. By 1895, he had acquired 7 shambas, plantations, and 10,000 slaves. He helped several white European explorers of the African continent, including David Livingstone and Henry Morton Stanley. So this man, I mean, he, like I said, he was heavily into slave trade. This is his house. We actually, now this photo of the house I took off the internet. The pictures that I took really didn't give much justice like this to the house. But this is his house. He had it built. It was really a mansion. It was the largest house in Zanzibar at the time. And he had thousands of slaves. So you could still to this day see the house, and they will even, there's people that's living there, and they say you catch them at the right time, they'll let you come in and, you know, look around and take pictures. So unfortunately, we were not there, you know, to, or they were not there at the time, you know, that we could go in and look. But I mean, this thing was huge. It's a huge house. That's the entrance to his house. And I did take a photo of the sign next to it. And this is what the sign says. Tip of Tip's house. Residence of the famous Arab trader, Ahmed B. Mohammed al-Majebi, Tip of Tip, who built up a large trading empire in the Eastern Congo in the 19th century. With Belgian colonization of the Congo, he returned to Zanzibar, where he acquired many clove plantations and built his house. He died in Zanzibar in 1905, and he was buried nearby. So, because of this man's attitude towards slavery and the way he just treated them, and the monies and everything that he made, his burial site was unkept because, of course, the people don't like him. They didn't care anything about him. And this is where he was buried. And this is an actual picture that I did take. And to look at that site of his tomb, it was trash everywhere. Grass was grown up on one side. And the tour guide looked at us. He said, so you can imagine how the people feel about this man. And Brenda looked at him. She said, yeah. She said, I mean, it's a lot of trash here. He said, because they came and they dumped trash. Even as they walk past, to this very day, they still throw trash up there on his tomb. They have no respect. And I don't blame them. I don't blame them. This man sold Bantu to other nations, took them into other nations, mistreated them, and the other nations mistreated them. So I don't blame them for how they are treating his tomb site. You had no respect for us. as a people, and we have no respect for you, even while you're dead. Nkosi Kangi, I'm done. Basseh. Nkosi
Yeah,
Kangi.
yeah.
Mhm.
Looking at the picture of Tipu Tip, was he Bantu that just took on the religion of Islam?
No, he was not Bantu.
Okay. Well, he looked like one of us.
Mhm. Yeah, that's why they said, that they thought he was a cousin. They thought, well, not him, but they thought Arabs were cousins.
Mm.
They look like us.
And the other thing, it said, I know that one slide you put up about him, he helped David Livingstone. Well, Livingstone was down in Zimbabwe area with the Shona, grabbing them up.
Well, remember I said that they were all over Africa, the Arabs. What I read earlier, they were all over. So
Wow.
yeah, they were getting slaves, or getting our people, stop saying slaves, Darren. They were getting our people from all over, taking them into slavery.
Wow. And that one slide you said it ended, just ended 2007?
Yes.
And that one's, man.
Yes.
Yeah, it's heavy stuff.
It is.
Yes, sir.
It's heavy stuff. Yeah. So now when we see them being crushed, like what happened in Turkey, sometimes because we don't know this type of information, we can find ourselves thinking, okay, but it's so painful because they were not there or something like that. But they have returned as well. They have returned to receive their judgment. So you saw those buildings; they were crushed. When you showed that bunker where people were were cramping, so now the buildings have crushed them. They are cramping now under the building. So all that we need on our side is to teach the right message, so that we can be able to escape what is coming. Because what is coming, it's going to be a severe judgment. The severe judgment is such that when the Most High says, even if my child has accepted my message, but if you are in a wrong border, when I execute my judgment, I don't guarantee you safe. So we need to start to preach the message, because what was done to the African nation cannot go unpunished, and the punishment will be severe.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. Man, it hurts. It hurts seeing what they did to our family. It hurt. And we don't hear a lot about the Arab slave trade. We don't hear a lot about the other side. It's a lot about the transatlantic slave trade. But when I began to do the research and look into this, and again, I thank everyone that has assisted me in this, to look at it, I'm like, my goodness, this hurts. My nephew, grandson coming in here. Yeah.
Okay, come on. Sorry.
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Hello.
Hello. So cute.
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh my goodness. Say
Oh.
bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, we're keeping him, so. But
goodness.
yeah, to see that, to hear that, you know, it really hurt. And I want our brothers and sisters, you know, to know you're not forgotten. You are not forgotten. And we're one, we're family. And so we're asking you to let's unite.
Mm-hmm.
Let us unite. We know that these evil entities that have taken our ancestors into slavery are all about division and separation. And they want you to look at us, you know, a certain way, you know, to stay away from us. And they telling us, stay away from you. They don't want us to unite. They don't want us to unite with our brothers and sisters on the continent. But you know what? We are coming together. We are coming together. And we have to. We're more than what they say we are. We are who Tata Nzambi said we are. We are gods. We're created in his image after his likeness. The image of Mama Ndombe. We are their children. So family, my brothers and sisters, kings, queens, let us unite. Let us come together.
Yes.
We're one. This is what the enemy fears. This is what the liars fear, is us uniting and coming together. But their time is over. Now it is time for truth to come forth and dispel all the lies. Basseh.
Basseh. Can I just add something?
Yes,
you know,
sir.
as we are talking about the unity, do you know that some of our people are being used by the powers that are to discourage the unity? What I saw under there's a guy say go black to Africa, where they are destroying the houses that were built by African Americans in Ghana. So if you can see that, you can see that what they did is like they accepted them in, and then after some time they build beautiful houses, and then next thing they move in with this like they would say there's so much corruption there in Ghana, where they will sell your house, just exchanging papers. Then they came and they were destroying those houses. Do you know that it will discourage you? So, but one thing that we have to understand, that the restoration that comes from Nzambi, there is no land that you have to pay for. The restoration of Nzambi does not operate with the current system. You need to give your skills and say you will be allocated here. The buying of land, we must move away from that. Anyone who tells you you need to buy land, you must know it's not operating with the spirit that is of the awakening or of the restoration. The spirit of the restoration, the land we don't sell, the land you get to be allocated. Kings are appointed to administer that particular purpose, not to sell any land. So we must always avoid any purchase of a land, because it's a curse by itself. If you purchase a land, it's a curse. The land has been given to you without anything that you have to pay for. All that we have to do is to follow the laws and the commandments of Nzambi. So let's avoid buying any lands in Africa, because the powers to be are also using our own people to cause discouragement. Even this Nana Addo of Ghana, he was making as if he was welcoming the children back into Ghana. The next thing he said, vaccine mandate. Remember what Revelation 13 said?
Yes.
They've got two horns like a lamb, but they speak like a dragon. You will see them, they've got melanin, they've got our nose, but they are not for us. So we should be careful about purchasing land, because purchasing land, it means we are not moving in line with the proper restoration that comes from Nzambi. The Nzambi's restoration does not involve payment of any lands. Okay, thank you.
Yes, Matondo, Matondo. You are so right. We have been told do not purchase land, and that is a must. We cannot. We're not supposed to. You know.
I did not
Mhm.
know that they destroyed the homes that were built by our people that went back to Ghana. That's so demoralizing. First of
Mhm.
all, they shouldn't have never bought it, paid for it.
Yes. Yeah. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead, Elder.
Yeah, I was just saying it's so painful because some people genuinely wants to return, and you find that you've got some money with you. Then they opening up Ghana. They say, okay, Ghana, you can come and buy, and everything goes well and everything. So you can understand those people. Like I would not that much blame them because the current system is operating that way. But what I'm just emphasizing is that the proper restoration of the African race does not involve any purchase of the land.
Yes. Yes.
So this whole, what was it called? The return home, that was all really a farce. It was planned.
Yes, just
Mhm.
to discourage you. You know what? Then they make it sure that they will videotape it. They will send it around. Then you will be discouraged. Then there will be this division. Now, see what's happening in Africa. You know, all of this is planned because even with this vaccine mandate by this Nana Addo in Ghana, many people got discouraged, saying, "Ghana, you are welcoming us. The next thing you said before we enter, we need to take this poison."
Mhm.
Yeah. For what I understand, that property was bought back in the 80s, not as a part of the return home. So they had that property for a while.
Or is
So
it? Oh, you mean the African Americans?
Yes, that property.
Okay.
I saw a video about that property in that vegan restaurant. And they bought that property back in either the late 70s or early 80s.
Is it?
Yeah.
It's
So
even
they,
worse now. Yeah.
yeah.
So are you speaking about the vegan restaurant who purchased the property,
No,
or
it
the
was
African Americans in general?
the African Americans, they went there, a man and his wife, and they bought that property, and some other people went and brought some property, and they built like vegan restaurant, like a little,
Mhm.
like the vegan restaurant. I think there's a little hotel there. Um, so yeah, but they bought it back in the late 70s or early 80s.
Mhm. Okay, so that was business.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, what he's referencing, is for those who are returning home, like the when Ghana opened up their doors and said, we're welcoming the diaspora to come back home. There were people that was purchasing land so that they can return to Ghana. And he's saying we should not have to,
Mm-hmm.
and we shouldn't be. Even NT has said the same thing. We should not be purchasing land because, as Elder said, it's a curse when you purchase land. And NT said you're giving your authority or your right over to the one that you're buying the land from. Okay, so when you do that, you're giving up your right to the land. You're now in that person's hands where they can look at you and say, well, we're gonna move you, kick you out because, and they'll come up with any reason to get you off the land. You can say I paid X amount of dollars for it. They'll come up with something to get you out. Who you think the government over there is going to rule in favor for? So the land is ours. We were taken off the land. That's our home. and we're looking to return home. So it's only right to be given land. That's our culture, that's our custom.
And then you have so many of our people. I've seen videos where they were there in Africa, like in Ghana, and they made the decision to come back to America discouraged, saying,
Mhm.
I made a mistake.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, yeah, what you were saying, is business, and I can see that because it is dealing with business. But when you're talking about going to move there to build a home and, this is your life, we should not be purchasing land for that.
Elder Jabulani made a really good point. With the demolition of that vegan building, it serves as a deterrent. Even though it's been there, but the ones who didn't move there, they are repatriated from American soil nonetheless. So they're using them as an example to those who are still here with the intention of trying to move back. Because one of the things that's also happening, and one of the things I think they mentioned in that recording, they said Hebrew Israelites.
Mm-hmm.
They gave that label. So that right there brings it to present time, to make it known that those who no longer consider themselves, slaves, but are re-identifying themselves as the people of the Bible and seeing that they don't belong on American soil, those will be the ones that fall under that Hebrew Israelite umbrella, because they're looking to leave the American soil to head back to Africa and even to the Middle East. So that right there would serve as a deterrent to them. See that, no, you can't, this is what's happening to your for the forerunners, so to speak. And that's what that's all about. So no, they need to be, we need to find some way to encourage them to stay and fight that good fight, because what belongs to you belongs to you. If you can hold on long enough, Tata Nzambi will give you the victory. He'll prepare that table before us in the presence of our enemy.
Yes, Basseh. All right, family. I am finished. Again, I thank you, for your input. Truly appreciate it, Elder Jabulani. I really, really do appreciate you, and thank you for your insight. Um, I would have liked to gone a little deeper, um, maybe some point, I can come back with some more, you know. I would like to talk about the areas where they were taken. We know Brazil and even in the Caribbean, South America, you know. Um, but to at least, again, like I said, we want to let them know they're family. And we have not forgotten about them. So, all right. Anything else before I close it out? All right. Dr. Nzambi, Mama Ndombe, we do again honor you. We thank you. We love you greatly. We thank you for allowing our elevated Nkulus to be with us, to speak. We thank you for your guidance. And we ask that you will continue to touch the lives of your children. Open the eyes. Continue to enlighten us. Continue to direct us and bring us together. We're ready to unite, and we're ready to rise to our rightful positions. We ask that you would increase us and give us back what is ours. And anyone that tries to stand in our way to prevent it. May they be destroyed. Basseh, Basseh, Basseh.
Ingeta